At the onset of the Younger Dryas, about 12,800 years ago, the evidence points toward Earth encountering a swarm of debris from a fragmented giant comet. Not just one big rock, not just one fireball, but a whole shattered cometary nucleus, hundreds, maybe thousands of large flaming pieces, sweeping across space directly in the Earth's path. Now picture this through their eyes. A giant glowing body appears near the sun, visible during sunrise and sunset, because it is so bright and close. Its dust and plasma tail, instead of streaming behind it, is pushed forward by the pressure of the solar wind, because the comet is traveling almost away from the sun. This makes the comet look not like a soft, trailing star, but like a horned, monstrous object, with two fiery projections reaching out in front of it. In other words, it looked like a glowing demon with horns coming out of the sunrise. This phenomenon is actually known today in cometary science. When a comet is approaching the sun at a particular angle, or when its fragmented pieces are interacting with solar radiation and magnetism, its dust tail can curve or be blown forward, creating a twin-tailed or horned appearance, especially if the nucleus is broken into multiple large pieces. The skies would have been spectacular and horrifying, multiple fireballs and airbursts, as fragments from the cometary debris entered the Earth's atmosphere. Explosions in the sky, similar to but far larger than the 1908 Tunguska explosion in Siberia, which flattened forests. Raining meteors, visible even during daytime, shockwaves, sonic booms from incoming fragments would have been deafening, fires on the ground caused by atmospheric explosions, airbursts and impacts, darkened skies from smoke, dust and soot rising into the atmosphere, sudden temperature drop, almost immediately after the fires, as sunlight was blocked by ash and dust. Imagine entire continents hearing the roaring of the atmosphere, seeing the world catch fire, and feeling the ground tremble under their feet, all while a two-horned comet loomed in the dawn sky. It would have been the ultimate apocalyptic vision. According to mainstream archaeology, at the very end of the last ice age, when the Earth was beginning to warm and glaciers were retreating, something catastrophic happened. Around 12,800 years ago, global temperatures plunged back into near-glacial conditions almost overnight, in an event known as the Younger Dryas. For decades, scientists puzzled over the suddenness and violence of this climatic reversal. Was it merely a quirk of ocean currents, a massive volcanic eruption, or was something even more devastating at play, a cosmic cataclysm that scarred the Earth from the Amazon to the Mediterranean? Today, mounting evidence suggests that the Younger Dryas may have been triggered by an extraterrestrial impact, one so vast and chaotic that it left behind a trail of molten glass, nanodiamonds, microspherules, and mysterious black mats across multiple continents. Some of the most compelling data comes from unlikely places: the Carolina Bays of North America, the ancient floodplains of Syria, and the wild river systems of South America. All these clues, when taken together, paint a haunting portrait of a world ravaged by fire, flood, and darkness, and hint at an event so powerful it may have unleashed massive tsunamis across the Atlantic Ocean, reaching deep into the Mediterranean and the jungles of the Amazon basin. The Younger Dryas, named after a cold-loving flower whose pollen surged during the event, represents one of the most abrupt climate shifts in the geologic record. Temperatures in the northern hemisphere plummeted by as much as 10 degrees Celsius, 18 degrees Fahrenheit, within a few decades, a geologic blink of an eye. The climate change lasted for over 1,000 years before Earth finally warmed into the stable Holocene epoch we now inhabit. For much of the 20th century, explanations centered on a disruption of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, a vital conveyor belt of warm ocean currents, perhaps a massive influx of fresh water from melting glaciers, like the hypothetical bursting of glacial Lake Agassiz, had shut down these currents, plunging the world back into the cold. Yet problems dogged the freshwater theory. It couldn't explain the suddenness of the event, nor the global scale of destruction found in the archaeological and geological record. Then, a group of scientists known as the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis Team proposed something radical. The Earth had collided with the debris of a fragmented comet or asteroid. This impact or airburst, they suggested, ignited wildfires across continents, triggered massive floods, and caused global cooling by filling the atmosphere with soot and aerosols. Since then, a flood of evidence has emerged from around the world, some of it buried in layers of blackened soil, some frozen in glass, and some written into the very shape of the land. One of the smoking guns for a cosmic impact lies in the form of high-temperature materials, such as molten glass and metallic microspherules. These substances require temperatures far beyond what natural wildfires or volcanic eruptions can generate, in some cases exceeding 2,000 degrees Celsius. In South America, researchers investigating the vast Pampas region of Argentina and Uruguay uncovered a curious layer of melted glass dated precisely to the Younger Dryas boundary. These glassy particles showed signs of being formed under extreme heat and pressure, consistent with an impact event. Chemical analyses revealed that the glass was rich in minerals that had undergone shock metamorphism, a feature that can only arise during events like meteorite strikes. A few tantalizing fossil finds hint that human populations suffered heavily. In South America, the site of Lagoa Santa in Brazil offers some of the most intriguing evidence. Here, ancient burials such as the famous Luzia woman and others dating to roughly 12,700 to 12,500 years ago reveal a population that was robust, resourceful, and possibly reeling from environmental chaos. Several skulls from Lagoa Santa show unusual trauma, including depressed fractures and healed wounds that suggest interpersonal violence or accidents in a more dangerous world. Burials from this period also reveal hurried and sometimes disturbed interments, as if communities were being displaced or overwhelmed. Moreover, the morphology of the Lagoa Santa people, with their more archaic Australo-Melanesian-like features, hints that a very ancient lineage was struggling to survive amid rising floods, burning forests, and mass animal extinctions. But it is at Lapa do Santo, a key site within Lagoa Santa, that the most shocking evidence emerges: severed human hands and dismembered corpses, carefully arranged in graves. Archaeologists found burials where hands had been amputated post-mortem and deliberately placed over the faces, necks, or chests of the deceased. Some skeletons were missing their limbs entirely, while others showed signs of careful defleshing, with fine-cut marks scored into bones, indicating not random violence but a practiced ritual. In several graves, severed hands were posed like masks, framing the face in what seems to be a symbolic act. Radiocarbon dating places these dismembered burials squarely between 10,600 and 9,400 radiocarbon years before present, or roughly 12,500 to 11,000 calendar years ago, precisely overlapping with the Younger Dryas boundary and its turbulent aftermath. Importantly, the forensic evidence suggests ceremony, not murder. These were not mass graves of the slaughtered, but painstaking, intentional burials designed to communicate something profound. Some archaeologists have proposed that these strange, haunting practices arose from social trauma, a direct cultural response to a world shattered by environmental collapse. In the face of overwhelming death, famine, and displacement, new mortuary rituals may have emerged to help survivors process unimaginable loss. It is even possible that the severed hands and dismembered corpses symbolize the absent dead, loved ones lost to sudden fires, floods, and destruction during the Younger Dryas cataclysm. Perhaps when bodies could not be retrieved, when someone was swept away by tsunami waters, burned in wildfires, or crushed under collapsing trees, communities recreated their presence through ritual acts. Severed limbs, fragments of the body, or even symbolic representations might have served as a focus for grief, a way of holding on to memory in a chaotic and broken world. The hands laid gently across faces, the arms positioned in gestures of embrace or mourning, suggest something deeper than fear. They hint at love, remembrance, and a desperate attempt to reclaim humanity from the ruins. Thus, the severed hands of Lagoa Santa are not merely artifacts of violence or mystery. They are voices across the millennia, whispering of a time when the sky fell, the seas rose, and the human spirit struggled and succeeded in finding ways to endure. Before the Younger Dryas cataclysm, early humans lived with the earth and sky in a relationship that was intimate, trusting, and reverent. The stars moved gently across the heavens. The rains came and went with the seasons. The forests provided, and the rivers sustained. Nature was not always easy, but it was predictable, a living, breathing companion. The sun rose reliably each day. The constellations told the time of year. The world was a vast, sacred organism in which humans were simply another thread. But that world ended in fire. When the Devil Horn's comet rose over the horizon, when fire fell from the sky, when the forests ignited and the rivers surged backward and the animals perished, everything humanity thought it knew about the universe was shattered. The heavens had betrayed them. The stars were no longer silent companions, they were harbingers of death. The earth was no longer a gentle mother, it was a battlefield. The forces they once trusted now seemed chaotic, violent, and unpredictable. In the aftermath, the survivors must have been profoundly traumatized, not only by the loss of loved ones and homes, but by the realization that the cosmos itself could turn hostile without warning. And so something fundamental shifted deep within the human spirit. Fear was born. No longer could humans merely observe nature. Now they sought to control it, to appease it, to build barriers against it. Across the world, you begin to see signs of this change. Ritual burials become more elaborate, perhaps trying to calm restless spirits or appease angry gods. Megalithic structures like Göbekli Tepe rise, not just as shelters, but as sanctuaries, sacred machines to track the sky, to predict disaster, to restore order to the broken heavens. Agriculture begins to take hold as survivors seek to control the fertility of the earth itself, refusing ever again to rely solely on the whims of wild nature. Humans began to measure the stars with obsessive precision, carving alignments into stone. They tracked the solstices, the equinoxes, the movements of comets, the shifting of seasons, desperate to detect any hint that the terror might return. The impulse to build cities, to raise temples, to worship storm gods and sun gods and earth goddesses, all can be seen as an echo of that ancient wound. A wound left not merely in the soil, but in the soul. It is in this dark rebirth that civilization itself was conceived, not as a celebration of nature, but as a defense against it. The survivors of the Younger Dryas catastrophe did not simply rebuild the world, they rebuilt their relationship to the cosmos, no longer with innocent wonder, but with vigilance, control, and awe tempered by terror. And deep down, across every ancient myth and sacred monument, you can still hear the same whisper: never again. South America's highlands, particularly the Andes Mountains, also bear scars of rapid, violent change at the Younger Dryas boundary. In the high Andes of Peru and Bolivia, glacial moraines show sudden retreat phases around 12,800 years ago, consistent with a burst of abrupt warming after intense cooling. Some researchers propose that after the initial Younger Dryas cooling, sudden regional warming triggered massive glacial floods, landslides and megafloods that reshaped valleys and left behind chaotic sediment deposits. Archaeological layers in Andean sites like Guitarrero Cave and Cunchaicha suggest a disruption in human occupation around the Younger Dryas boundary. Guitarrero, a cave used for early storage and habitation, shows a pause or break in stratigraphy consistent with environmental upheaval. Meanwhile, the Titicaca Basin shows unusual lake-level changes and sediment disruption during this period, hinting at unstable hydrology, possibly influenced by tsunamis reaching deep inland via tributaries connected to the Amazon system. Even in the rugged heart of the Andes, it seems no place was untouched. The sedimentary records echo the same chaos seen in the Amazon lowlands and North American plains. Massive runoff, soil erosion, rapid sedimentation, hallmarks of an unstable and flooded world. Even more tantalizing are discoveries from Abu Huraira, an archaeological site in Syria that preserves one of the earliest known villages on Earth. In the ruins of this ancient community, scientists found an unmistakable horizon of melted glass droplets and splashed fused minerals. The microscopic structure of these materials revealed that they had been instantaneously heated and melted, again at temperatures that only a cosmic airburst or impact could produce. The presence of these high-energy materials in both South America and the Middle East suggests a global event. It was not a local firestorm or volcanic eruption that destroyed Abu Huraira and spread glass across the pampas. It was something that reached across oceans and continents. Across North America, another ominous signal marks the Younger Dryas boundary, the so-called black mat layer. This thin, dark band of organic, rich soil has been found at over 50 archaeological and paleontological sites, including famous locations like Murray Springs, Arizona, and Topper, South Carolina. The black mat contains a mix of soot, charcoal, nanodiamonds, platinum anomalies, and high concentrations of microspherules, tiny metallic spheres formed in the fireball of an extraterrestrial explosion. Underneath the black mat, the bones of mammoths, mastodons, camels, horses, and saber-toothed cats are common. Above it, these megafauna vanish almost completely. The black mat then appears to be a boundary layer, a dark tombstone, marking the end of the Ice Age's great beasts and many of the earliest human cultures in North America. It suggests a sudden catastrophic event that burned forests, killed animals en masse, and poisoned the land. Intriguingly, the same chemical signatures, including platinum group metals and carbon microspherules, have been found in black mats as far south as Chile.
People talk glibly about science. What is science? People coming out of a university with a master's degree or a PhD, you take them into the field and they literally don't believe anything unless there's a peer-reviewed paper. It's the only thing they accept. And you say to them, but let's observe, let's think, let's discuss. They don't do it. It's just, is it in a peer-reviewed paper or not? That's their view of science. I think it's pathetic.
Adding another piece to the puzzle are the enigmatic Carolina Bays, a series of over 500,000 elliptical depressions scattered across the Atlantic coastal plain from New Jersey to Florida. These shallow, water-filled features have puzzled scientists for nearly 2 centuries. Their shapes are remarkably consistent, all oriented toward the northwest, as if something rained down from the sky at an oblique angle. Some researchers propose that the Carolina Bays are secondary impact craters, formed by debris ejected from a primary impact somewhere near the Laurentide ice sheet, perhaps in the Great Lakes region. If a comet fragment exploded over or slammed into the ice sheet, it could have vaporized trillions of tons of water and rock, launching molten projectiles across the continent. When these fragments fell back to Earth, they created the bays, their elliptical shapes molded by the low-angle impacts. The Carolina Bays, therefore, may represent the footprints of a much larger catastrophe, one that didn't just burn the forests but gouged the Earth itself. If the Younger Dryas impact involved an object striking the ice sheet, or more dramatically the Atlantic Ocean itself, it would have created an enormous shockwave. The release of energy would have vaporized ice, generated hurricane-force winds, and, crucially, produced a colossal tsunami. Imagine a wall of water hundreds of feet high racing outward from the impact zone at the speed of a jetliner. Coastal areas across the Atlantic would have been obliterated. Islands would have vanished. Rivers would have surged backward. The low-lying basins of Europe, North Africa, and South America would have faced annihilation. Geological evidence suggests that the Mediterranean basin experienced abrupt flooding events during the Younger Dryas period. Layers of chaotic sediments, shell deposits, and underwater landslide scars along Mediterranean coasts hint at enormous wave action that cannot easily be explained by normal sea level rise. In South America, the mighty Amazon River basin tells a similar story. Some floodplain deposits date back to around 12,800 years ago and show signs of sudden, massive inundation. Given the Atlantic's proximity, a mega tsunami could have surged up the Amazon's ancient course, altering its hydrology and ecology for centuries to come. To understand the potential scale of destruction during the Younger Dryas, we can look to a more recent, smaller-scale event, the Tunguska explosion over Siberia in 1908. This airburst flattened over 2,000 square kilometers of forest, an area roughly the size of a major metropolitan city, with an estimated force of 10 to 15 megatons of TNT. Eyewitnesses described a fiery object streaking across the sky, followed by a blinding flash, a series of deafening explosions, and a blast wave that knocked people off their feet hundreds of kilometers away. Seismic waves circled the globe. Atmospheric dust from the explosion altered sunsets for months. Yet the Tunguska object was relatively small, perhaps only 50 to 100 meters wide. Imagine instead a series of Tunguska-scale objects, or something even larger, kilometers across, striking Earth's ice sheets or oceans. The Younger Dryas event would have unleashed devastation orders of magnitude greater than Tunguska, burning forests, shattering landscapes, and spawning tsunamis that reshaped entire continents. The Tunguska explosion is a chilling reminder of how vulnerable the Earth remains to cosmic encounters and how sudden and total the destruction can be. What about the humans who lived through this catastrophe? Archaeological sites dating to the Younger Dryas boundary show signs of abrupt cultural collapse. Abu Huraira, for instance, preserves evidence of a thriving Neolithic village that was suddenly destroyed by fire and chaos. Skeletons found at the site suggest violent deaths and traumatic injuries, consistent with falling debris or sudden structural collapse. In North America, the disappearance of Clovis culture coincides with the impact boundary. At sites like Murray Springs and Wally's Beach, bones of butchered mammoths lie directly beneath the black mat layer, suggesting that human populations reliant on megafaunal hunting faced catastrophic collapse. When we pull these threads together, the black mats, the molten glass, the microspherals, the trauma in burials, the sudden appearance of Göbekli Tepe, the disrupted landscapes of the Andes, a chilling but coherent picture emerges. The Younger Dryas catastrophe was not a local or regional event. It was a planetary convulsion, one that swept across continents and oceans, reshaping the Earth and the human story. The very survivors of this event, the people of Lagoa Santa, the builders of Göbekli Tepe, the nomadic bands roaming the devastated plains of North America, carried forward the memory of the sky falling, of the world burning and flooding. Perhaps it was this memory that seeded the ancient myths of a great flood, a day of darkness, a fiery rain sent by angry gods. Perhaps it is a memory still buried deep within us today. A few tantalizing fossil finds hint that human populations suffered heavily. In South America, ancient burials at Lagoa Santa in Brazil, dated close to 12,500 years ago, show individuals with cranial trauma and unusual burial patterns. In North America, isolated skeletal remains from sites such as Arlington Springs, California, and Spirit Cave, Nevada, suggest a dramatic demographic bottleneck during this period. While direct evidence of mass human deaths is rare, as one might expect given the passage of time and taphonomic loss, the cultural silence in the archaeological record is deafening. Where bustling settlements and trade networks once stood, only ashes and silence remained. If the Younger Dryas cataclysm was truly global, we would expect to find evidence not only in the Americas, Europe and the Middle East, but also across Asia and into Australia. Until recently, data from these regions was sparse, but now tantalizing clues are beginning to emerge, suggesting that the devastating effects of the impact, or series of impacts, may indeed have been felt across the entire planet. Recent discoveries in Asia point to chemical and physical signatures matching those found in North America and Europe. In South Africa, researchers uncovered platinum anomalies in sediments dating to the Younger Dryas boundary, a strong geochemical signal, since platinum is rare in the Earth's crust but abundant in meteorites. South Africa is not Asia, of course, but this suggests that the platinum-rich dust cloud could have encircled the globe, blanketing multiple continents. More compellingly, a recent study identified platinum anomalies and microspherals at sites across the Middle East and parts of Central Asia, including Turkey, near Göbekli Tepe, and Syria, at Abu Huraira. This platinum group signature is considered one of the most reliable markers of extraterrestrial impact. In China, research into ancient lake sediments, such as those from Lake Qinghai on the Tibetan Plateau, shows abrupt climatic shifts around 12,800 years ago. Layers of charcoal and sudden ecological changes hint at intense regional fires and environmental stress, consistent with global biomass burning triggered by an atmospheric impact. Although no black mat layers exactly like those in North America have yet been firmly documented in China or Mongolia, there are signs of sudden megafaunal extinction and landscape disruption during this time frame. In Australia, the evidence is more circumstantial, but highly suggestive. Australia experienced a mass extinction of its giant animals, the so-called Australian megafauna, during the late Pleistocene. Massive wombats, giant kangaroos, huge flightless birds and carnivorous lizards disappeared. While older models placed this extinction between 40,000 and 50,000 years ago, often blamed on human arrival, newer radiocarbon recalibrations suggest that some megafauna may have survived until 13,000, 12,000 years ago, astonishingly close to the Younger Dryas boundary. Furthermore, ancient Aboriginal traditions speak vividly of the fire coming from the sky, the ground shaking and waters rising, oral histories that eerily parallel stories from Native American tribes and Mediterranean legends. Australian rock art at places like Kakadu National Park includes enigmatic images that some researchers interpret as depicting catastrophic events, possibly including cosmic phenomena. In terms of physical geology, charcoal-rich layers associated with large-scale fires have been found across parts of the Australian interior, dating roughly to the terminal Pleistocene. While Australia's natural fire regimes are ancient, the intensity and scale of these ancient fires seem anomalous, perhaps triggered by global atmospheric disruptions after a cosmic impact. It must be stressed that in Asia and Australia, direct physical impact craters or molten glass fields, like Abu Huraira or North America, have not yet been conclusively identified for this period. However, just as in South America and Europe we find sudden extinction of animals, rapid ecological shifts, signs of abrupt climate change, mysterious fire horizons, and sediment anomalies, and ancient human cultural disruptions. Together, these suggest that the Younger Dryas catastrophe was felt even in the far corners of the world, even if the evidence remains patchier in the southern hemisphere and Central Asia. Thus, the global mosaic continues to build. From Greenland to Brazil, Syria to Australia, evidence points to a cataclysm that transcended continents, a cosmic assault that left no region untouched. The evidence from Asia and Australia is like faint echoes compared to the booming signals from North America and Europe. But the patterns are there, whispering of the same disaster, the same fire, and the same desperate human struggle to survive in a world turned suddenly hostile. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis remains controversial, but its growing body of evidence demands attention. Melted glass in Syria and Argentina, microspherules in South Africa and North America, platinum spikes in Greenland, black mats sealing the fate of mammoths and saber-tooths, the Carolina Bays pointing to an impact from the northwest, signs of massive coastal flooding in the Mediterranean and Amazon basins, echoes of destruction that eerily mirror the Tunguska explosion, but on a global scale. Piece by piece, the story of a planetary cataclysm takes shape, one in which the Earth, vulnerable and fragile, collided with something from beyond the sky, one in which roaring firestorms, blinding dust clouds, and massive oceanic tsunamis shaped the course of human history forever. If the Younger Dryas truly began with a cosmic impact, then it reminds us how thin the veil of stability is, and how the future of civilization may yet depend on our ability to see and understand the dangers that lie hidden among the stars. When the pieces are gathered from across the world, the molten glass of Syria, the black mats of North America, the severed hands of Lagoa Santa, the platinum anomalies of South Africa, the fire-scarred sediments of Australia, and the disrupted lakes of China, they reveal a terrifying truth. The Younger Dryas cataclysm was not a local disaster, nor a hemispheric event. It was a global assault, a planetary wound that scarred continents and reshaped the destiny of life on Earth. In North America, forests burned to ash, megafauna perished in vast numbers, and ancient hunters watched their world vanish under darkened skies. In South America, great river basins like the Amazon were flooded and rearranged, while peoples like those at Lagoa Santa faced a transformed and more hostile landscape. In the Andes Mountains, glaciers collapsed, valleys flooded, and early human settlements were washed away. In Europe and the Middle East, fires blackened the landscape from Spain to Syria, with villages like Abu Huraira buried beneath layers of molten glass and destruction. In Africa, platinum group metals quietly settled into the soil, a cosmic fingerprint dusting the land in the wake of distant fireballs. In Asia, from the Fertile Crescent to the high plateaus of Tibet, sudden climatic reversals froze rivers, shifted vegetation, and shook the foundations of early human communities. Even in Australia, ancient megafauna disappeared, and Aboriginal oral histories preserved memories of fire from the heavens and great floods. Everywhere we look, we find the same signs: sudden extinction, violent environmental change, and the rise of a new world born from ash and flood. The timing is too precise, the patterns too repetitive for coincidence. A single event, or a series of closely timed impacts, seems to have triggered a 1,000-year dark age that delayed human civilization, erased ancient megafaunal species, and perhaps sowed the seeds of the great myths of fire, water, and sky that would echo down through millennia. The survivors, scattered and shell-shocked, did more than endure. In the Middle East, they built Göbekli Tepe, perhaps as a cosmic warning carved in stone. In Brazil, they redefined death and burial, honoring lost souls with severed hands and ritual memory. In Australia, they passed down through countless generations the story of fire falling from above. The Younger Dryas was not simply a climatic anomaly. It was a global crucible, a baptism of fire, ice and water that forced humanity to adapt or perish. In the end, it was resilience, that spark of human ingenuity, ritual and remembrance, that carried our ancestors through the long darkness. But the warning remains. Written in glass, in bone, in shattered stone, it tells us, the earth is not as safe as it seems, the sky is not as empty as it looks, and catastrophe is never farther away than the next breath of the universe. Even now, long after the fires have burned out, after the black mats have been buried, after the severed hands have turned to dust and the horned comet has vanished into the endless night, the earth still remembers. The story is written not only in myths and monuments, but in the very bones of our world, in layers of platinum and soot, in shattered stones, in lost species and broken rivers. It is carved into the weathered faces of forgotten temples, whispered in the shape of constellations, echoed in the oldest fears that still shudder through the human soul. The Younger Dryas cataclysm was not just a tragedy of fire and flood. It was a message written in the stars themselves, a brutal reminder that the universe is alive, wild, chaotic and infinitely indifferent to the dreams of men. A reminder that the sky, so often a symbol of hope and guidance, can also be a wellspring of destruction. That the line between order and annihilation is as thin as the skin of an ancient comet. We are the descendants of those who survived the first great trial by fire. We live in cities built atop old wounds. We chart the skies with machines our ancestors could scarcely imagine. Yet even now, in the depths of our deepest fears, we remember. We remember the day the sky turned against us. We remember the devil horns rising with the dawn. We remember that civilization itself, our laws, our temples, our walls, were born from the ashes of terror. And if we have forgotten, if we ever grow too proud or too blind, the stars are still there, waiting to speak again.